Caro, and welcome to episode 103 of Caropop. This week, Caropop comes alive because our guest is none other than Peter Frampton. If you're within a certain age range, as I am, you got to know the supremely talented singer-songwriter-guitarist through the 1976 blockbuster double live album, Frampton Comes Alive. On AM radio, FM radio, you couldn't escape it. The Talk Box, Show Me the Way, Baby I Love Your Way, Do You Feel Like We Do? Plus, as a friend recently reminded me, he looked so cool as that gatefold cover opened vertically to show a backlit full-body shot of him in golden guitar god splendor with his vintage custom Les Paul. But although Peter Frampton was just 25 when Frampton Comes Alive came out, he'd already had an extensive career. He played with schoolmate David Bowie as a 12-year-old, was in a band managed by Rolling Stones bassist Bill Wyman as a 14-year-old, and was lead guitarist and singer for the British band The Herd when he was 16. At 18, he formed Humble Pie with Steve Marriott of the Small Faces, and the two of them shared singing, songwriting, and guitar-playing duties. Frampton played on 4 Humble Pie studio albums and then the live album Rockin' the Fillmore, which outsold them all. But by the time Rockin' the Fillmore came out in 1971, Frampton had left Humble Pie to launch a solo career. He went on to make 4 solo albums and then a live album that outsold them all. By a lot. Now, Intervention Records, a small audiophile label based in Gig Harbor, Washington, has released a limited edition, all-analog mastered 3LP box set called Frampton at 50. It features the 3 best regarded of those 4 Frampton solo albums. Wind of Change from 1972 sets the template with his lyrical guitar work, often acoustic, plus rockers including The Lodger and All Right, both of which feature drummer Ringo Starr. The harder-edged Frampton's Camel from 1973 was intended to launch a band of the same name and features the original studio version of Do You Feel Like We Do. The simply titled Frampton from 1975 took a commercial and critical step forward, though its 2 singles, Show Me the Way and Baby I Love Your Way, were not hits. The live versions would follow in just a year. Speaking from his Nashville home, Frampton tells us of his work with Intervention owner Shane Bettner to prepare the fantastic-sounding, lovingly packaged Frampton at 50. And he takes us back to those early years when he was figuring it all out and setting the stage for his big breakthrough. Why did he leave Humble Pie? Did his songwriting change from that band to his solo projects? What was it like doing uncredited guitar work on George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, and how did that experience lead to his use of the Talk Box? For that matter, what is he really saying on the Talk Box in the middle of the live version of Do You Feel Like We Do? Is it as dirty as I thought it was when I was a kid? How did he come to write 2 of his biggest hits on the same day? How did his popularity in a few cities, including San Francisco, pave the way for Frampton Comes Alive? And how were his live shows different once Frampton Comes Alive took off? Finally, does he have any thoughts on Rolling Stone founder Jan Wenner's recent fall from grace? And is he more hopeful about finally being chosen for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Peter Frampton was on a rocket ship in the mid-1970s, and you'll have a blast riding along with him in this Caropop conversation. Enjoy. Fantastic to talk to you. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks. Well, I got this fantastic box here.
Great.
50, and it sounds really great. And it's also just fun to go back to those albums. How involved were you in sort of putting that together, and what was it like for you to kind of go back and listen to that part of your career?
Well, I was, Shane involved me in every aspect of it. So from the finding of the masters to the mastering, which master we used, all that stuff. And then tutored me on how to make a good cover because the card, I mean, it's better than any of them. But the colors, we went back to the original color sheet. I mean, it was quite amazing what he managed to do. Yes. So that I applaud him for all that. Authenticity is his name.
Sure. They sound fantastic. And I actually sent him a note commending him for the transparency on, the sourcing of from the original master tape or from the British tape that was used for one or 2 of them. And everything I've heard from Intervention has sounded wonderful between the tip-on jackets and the heavy vinyl. And
right.
So
he goes the extra mile. He didn't mess around. He doesn't mess around, which is great.
Now, did he come to you and say, I want to concentrate on these earlier albums of yours?
Yes. And I believe that, not 100% sure about this, but there's an album missed out there. Something's happening, obviously. Right. I believe that Universal only gave him license for 3 at a time. So I think he skipped Something's Happening because it wasn't, if you'd have done the first three and not had Frampton, that would have been a drag,
Right.
So I understand, but I'm hoping that, because Something's Happening has I Want to Go to the Sun on it, and there's other ones on there that, well, Something's Happening as well. So I do hope that one comes out eventually, comes back out on vinyl.
Yeah, it does complete the progression. So maybe he can get that one separately. So the first album, Wind of Change, you've just left Humble Pie. You've decided you're going to go out on your own, even though you as Humble Pie have just recorded this Fillmore live album, which is about to come out and turns out it's going to go gold. But you felt like it was time for you to just sort of spread your own wings and do your own thing. Was there a shift in the way you wrote songs because you were writing them for yourself instead of for a band?
Well, the thing was that I was always writing riffs for Humble Pie and songs for myself, because we'd all come with riffs and bits of songs, and the beauty of Humble Pie was we'd stick it together, and that was the fun of it. And we just jam on a riff and turn it into whatever. As the direction of Humble Pie narrowed to more what we were playing, like much more sort of heavier rock, as opposed to our whole act was pretty much energetic. There was on the next records, there was not going to be a place. My music wasn't kind of fitting. We had all done acoustic stuff in the beginning, Humble Pie.
Right.
Just wasn't working for us at that. Well, the audience told us they like the stage act, they like that. So, that's why we did the live record. But it was just amping up a little bit. And my songs that ended up being on Wind of Change wouldn't fit with Humble Pie. Whereas before there was, we all had our own acoustic tracks on albums for Humble Pie.
Were those songs that you'd been stockpiling over the years, or did you just have a fresh go at songwriting after Humble Pie and wrote that batch of songs?
I had them on the go, actually. I mean, I was already starting to write them, kind of like George Harrison stockpiling All Things Must Pass.
Right.
He did rather better than I did.
I did not know until I read your memoir, Do You Feel Like I Do, that you're on many of the tracks of All Things Must Pass. Yeah.
It blows my mind to think it, but I had met George on another session he was playing and producing for Doris Troy, and the first production by a Beatle for the Apple label.
Right.
So I just got brought into the studio by his assistant, said, "Do you want to meet George?" And I said, "George who?" And long story short, I end up in the studio that day I met him. 20 minutes, but not even 20 minutes later, I'm in the studio with his Lucy Les Paul. We didn't know what it was called then,
right?
Or I didn't. The guitar that Clapton played on "While My Guitar Gently Weeps." I'm playing that guitar through like the same amp, probably. I don't know, but anyway, I passed the audition, as it were, and George was very pleased. And 2 weeks later, he called me up and said, I'm doing my own album now. Would you come and play on mine? So I said, of course, yeah. So it was me and George on acoustics, sitting next to 3 of Badfinger. So it was 5 acoustics, 2 basses, 2 drums, 2 keyboards, you name it. There was 2 of them.
Right.
Because it was that killer producer, Phil Spector.
So Phil Spector's in the booth watching this all and orchestrating this whole thing?
Yes. He was a killer producer before he was a killer, I guess.
There you go. So when you listen, so first of all, which songs did you wind up on? And when you hear the album, can you be like, oh, there I am? It's such a wall of sound, obviously, with Phil Spector.
I know. No, it's a plethora of acoustics. And I played on, 5 or 6 tracks, probably 5 in the week I was there. And it was mainly If Not For You, behind that
locked door. Sorry, I
locked door. Yeah, the ones with Pete Drake on, the pedal steel player.
Right.
And then I left, and 2 weeks goes by again, and George calls me up again. He says, Pete, Phil wants more acoustics. So I said, you're kidding me. He said, I know, but he's Phil Spector. So, so anyway, but this time it's just me and George sitting on stools in front of the glass, looking at Phil Spector and the engineer. And they first put up the 4 or 5, 6 tracks that I'd played on, and we overdubbed on those some more, you know. And then George said, oh, this is sounding good. Put up some more, put up some more. So then this is where the gray area.
Right.
There's so many that I played on that he had to show me the chords, like My Sweet Lord. I had to play on it, just about it. I would say I'm playing on at least 8 or 9 tracks, but I couldn't tell you the ones that we overdubbed to because my head was blank. Because guess what? I'm sitting next to George Harrison on stools, and between numbers we're playing the blues. And my mind went just as if I wasn't there. I thought the floor was going to open up. I was going to go in there. And that is singularly one of the most important moments or most enjoyable moments of my life, is sitting there with George in front of Phil Spector. That's the most bizarre thing I can ever think of from when I was like starting to play guitar when I was 8 or 9, thinking that one day maybe I'll play on stage, you know. And you go from that to sitting in Abbey Road on 2 stools next to, you know, I mean, it doesn't get any better.
Right.
You know?
I mean, you'd started so early, and you knew Bill Wyman early on, but still,
right.
This was
Bill,
next
when
level.
I was 14. I spoke to him the other day. He's still going. He's just released a book, Bill Wyman has, about the history of Chelsea. He's got 2 more books coming out. I think he said before Christmas. He's releasing an album right now, and he's working on another album. So the man doesn't stop, you know. So
he's on a track on the new Stones album too, I read.
Yes. It was one, he told me about it because I said, oh, that's great they got you. And he said, well, it's an unfinished track with Charlie, so on drums. So he said they wanted the old rhythm section for that.
Nice.
So that's a great idea.
So did working with George and Phil Spector shape what you were doing, you know, when you went into do Wind of Change and all these other things on your own?
I guess it had to have. I took all the inspiration in, but no, I kind of stopped. It was just Chris Kimsey and myself, engineer, and we kind of made it up as we went along. You know, it was like, ooh, everything was new, you know. Obviously, I'd recorded a lot before, but to actually do my own music, you know, it was a big change. So
right. And not to fixate on the All Things Must Pass thing, but Pete Drake was known for using the talk box. Is that how you were introduced to it?
That's how I first heard it and saw a physical one in front of me. Yes.
So it was working on All Things Must Pass that led to you using the talk box.
Yes, it was. Not only that, Pete Drake lent that one that I saw to Joe Walsh.
For Rocky Mountain Way?
And that's the one that's on Rocky Mountain Way.
Now, did he just bring it into the studio when you guys were like recording all these tracks for All Things Must Pass? Like, hey,
he always had it with him in his bag. It was part of his accoutrement, you know? And he just said, you know, when they were changing reels, we don't do that anymore. There's never any time for a breather. You want another take? Can't you wind the tape back? Give me a moment. So, yeah. And he just said, you want to hear something? I said, yeah. And he was instantly a lovely man, you know, and very affable, and got out this black box and stuck it on the end of his pedal steel, and then started plugging in wires, and then put a tube in his mouth, and the pedal steel started singing to me with the sound that I'd originally heard on Radio Luxembourg late at night when I was very young, They used their call letters like radio stations did over here too.
Right.
With that. Alvino Ray was the guy that did the very first talk box. And it was that fabulous Wayne. And I'd heard that when I was like 9 or 10, 11, very young. And I'd always thought, how did they do that? Then I heard Stevie Wonder do it on Music of My Mind. Jeff Beck do it because he was working with Stevie. He did it on She's a Woman, the Beatles number. Then I met Pete Drake, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Did you kind of tuck that idea in your back pocket? Like, one of these days, I'm going to find the right song for this. Or did you just start, messing around with it right away?
It's all intermingled with Joe Walsh and Pete Drake because Joe loved Pete Drake's talk box. It was great for recording, but Bob Heil of Heil Sound, he makes microphones now, but in the old days, he used to make PAs and rent them out, kind of the early Clare brothers. And he was also a ham radio operator, and so was Joe Walsh. And they were big friends. They come from the same area, I believe, in America. And so they'd been these buddies for years. So being that Bob Heil was this technical guy, Joe said to him one day, called him up and said, "Hey, I got this talk box from Pete Drake, but Bob, it's not loud enough. I need it louder." So Bob says, "Okay, let me have a think about this." And so bingo, he comes up with the Heil talk box, and I got one for Christmas in 1973.
Ah, there you go.
1973, I got it from Bob Heil, and who I knew as well. And then right after Christmas, I went and into a rehearsal room for like a couple of weeks and just messed with it and learned how to use it. And then the first time I ever used it on record was Show Me the Way on Frampton. But I was already now, before we recorded Frampton, I had introduced the talk box into Do You Feel at the end.
For the live performance of it.
For the live.
Yeah, because it's not on the Frampton's Camel version, but it obviously is on the, Frampton Comes Alive version very famously. So
yes.
And Show Me the Way which is on the album Frampton, it's pretty prominent on that as well.
Yes. So that's the genesis of my talking boxing.
I have to admit, when I would hear Do You Feel Like We Do, I guess on FM radio, we were always like debating on what you were saying when it was like, I want to, we always thought it was something like, always thought it was something they should have been bleeping. What are you actually saying at that point?
Well, I can't tell you that.
I didn't see it in the memo. I looked.
After 54, whatever it is, 50 years, I still can't tell. I won't admit to saying the F word.
You won't admit to it. I was just.
No, I did. It isn't actually. It's thank you.
It is thank you.
But I never said anything because everybody, he's saying fuck you.
Well, it's true that when I went back to it, I thought it doesn't really sound like the F word, but when I was, the right age for it, it totally sounded like the F word, and we got a real big kick out of it.
Oh yeah, it definitely sounds like fuck yeah, right.
No, I think I was like 11 or something, or 10, and 12. 12. It was just perfect.
Oh, you weren't right. Oh, you're a youngster. That's right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for saying that. Okay, well, good. So we've cleared all that up. I appreciate that.
Thank goodness.
So Wind of Change, you're sort of getting your sound together. You also have your sort of Beatles track at the end with All Right, with Ringo and Billy Preston and former Caropop guest Klaus Wurman.
And Ringo also played on The Lodger as well.
Right. He plays really well on The Lodger. Like that's that song has some real propulsion behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of what you were doing at that point, do you feel like you were sort of figuring out your sound and approach? I mean, it's a pretty accomplished first album, but it's also when you sort of listen to those 4 albums in a row, you can hear a progression of you finding the band that then becomes the Frampton Comes Alive band. and that
Right.
sound.
Yeah, it was just a natural progression of learning as I go. Like I said, we made it up as we went along, and then went through various different incarnations of the band in a very quick period.
Right.
And ended up with, in the beginning of 74, with Bob Mayo coming in, and Andrew Bown, who was playing keyboards, moved to bass.
Right.
So we had Bob Mayo, John Siomis, Andrew Bown, and myself at the very beginning of the year, 74. And then Andrew decided he was going to go back and work on his solo career. And that's when he left, and we got Stanley Sheldon came in with the fretless. He was only in the band, I think, 3 months before we recorded Frampton Comes Alive. So it was very quick, maybe a little bit longer, but.
So Frampton's Camel is the second of those albums. And is the artist on that album you, or is the artist actually the band Frampton's Camel?
Well, it was supposed to be a band album, but the management got rid of the band, basically, in the deal, which I didn't know about. That sort of stuff goes on throughout. Well, I'm supposedly pretty good at math, but I don't use that side of my brain. I've never been driven by the mighty dollar or the mighty pound. It's never been about that. So unfortunately, when a manager or business people around you realize that, they take advantage of you,
When you're a creative person, you only have room for so much to worry about. And do you want to be worrying about your creative growth, or do you want to be worrying about, the numbers? And so you want to be able to trust someone. And unfortunately then, and it still happens today, they're just like a lot of people who take advantage of that situation.
Yeah.
But Frampton's Camel that was the band. The band
Yes.
you had was Frampton's Camel.
It was, and it was supposed to be, I believe we had done a deal with each member of the band to, get a percentage from that album. But I don't think it ended up that way. But I wasn't to know that. It was very upsetting, that whole thing. But anyway, and then I just went back to Peter Frampton.
Right. And then the fourth album is just Frampton, and even just calling it Frampton is kind of making a statement, right?
Yeah, that was one of my better solo albums in total, even though I love Frampton's Camel. And I mixed it myself too. So that was my first outing as a mix engineer. So I'm very proud of that one. But Frampton, I think overall is by far got the better bunch of songs on there.
So, and You've Shown Me the Way and Baby I Love Your Way are on that.
Yes.
And did you write those both in the same day?
Yes.
That was a good day.
It was a it was a very good day.
I'd take that day.
So I was in the Bahamas. I'd borrowed Steve Marriott's cottage. You see, when I left Humble Pie, I didn't get any of the good shit. They started getting money and bought these cottages on the beach. There was one for Frank Barcelona, the agent. There was one for D. Anthony, and there was 4 for each of Humble Pie. And so Clem walked right into that one, and he got my cottage. So anyway, I borrowed the cottage from Steve. We were still good friends, and after a while, and that's when I wrote. I didn't write anything for a couple of weeks. I just sort of was just lazing around on the beach and stuff, and then realized I better get writing. So that's when I wrote. I picked up my Epiphone acoustic, and in the morning, I wrote "Show Me the Way," verse and music, and one verse, and the chorus. So I had a couple of verses to write, and then I said, "Well, I better move on." So I had some lunch, went outside, sat under a palm tree with my boombox and my lyric sheet and my lyric book. And by the time the sun started to set, I had finished the lyrics of Baby, I Love Your Way.
Wow. Like, how did those songs start? Like, when you started Show Me the Way, was it on the guitar, you finding the chords and then just sort of
Yes.
singing over it?
Yeah.
What was your process like at that point? And was that typical of how you'd been writing
Yes.
for a while?
Yes. In fact, I've gone back to that. No drum machine, no nothing, no nothing. Just you, a guitar, or you and a piano, or whatever you want to write on. I don't write on trumpet. I don't know. But for me, I would always just be playing and then come up with, oh, wait a second, what's that? And then I'd put my boombox on record and I'd put down the chords and then wait a second. And then I would piece it all together musically. And then I would start writing to the lyrics after I had the chords and the melody up here,
Right. So is the first thing for Show Me the Way just the beginning of the song then, or did you come to that? So just the strumming of that, and then you started kind of singing over it.
Yeah.
And then you got the chorus.
That was it.
Would you then go and record this to make sure you didn't forget it?
Yeah, I would have the boombox.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The Sony 550A, which my tech, Jimmy Bowen, heard me talk about this, and they don't make them anymore, obviously, for years and years and years and years. Guess what he found? A Sony 550A boombox with the Electroset mics, exactly the one I used to record on. So I have it back now.
Do you still have those cassettes?
Some of them, but not a lot of them, no. But I do have some old cassettes, yeah.
The next reissue, you could have the bonus tracks would be like your the Under the Palm Tree demos.
Exactly.
So Baby I Love Your Way was the same thing. You started writing the music of it and then came up with.
Yeah, same thing. The only difference really was same guitar, my Epiphone Texan, but Show Me the Way was written in open G, and so I didn't write something similar. I tuned the guitar to regular tuning for Baby I Love Your Way.
And as you mentioned, you were mixing on Frampton's Camel, and you have production credits on these records. How much more sort of in control of your sound did you feel like you were by the time you were doing the album Frampton?
Well, Chris Kimsey and I had it down by then. I mean, we had a specific, I would use my Ampeg Echo Twin for lead solos, use something else for rhythm, and just the way we would work. We went down to the castle in just outside Wales, I think, and Gloucestershire. That's where we recorded all the tracks down there, which was fantastic. So everybody was in a different room, with this enormous sound of each room. It was fantastic. So that's why the Frampton album sounds the way it does. It's got a very, very cool sound to it.
And when you wrote those two songs, did you think, Show Me the Way, Baby I Love Your Way, these are going to be sort of signature songs for me. These are going to stick around for a while. Did you have any idea?
No, I had no idea. And we just thought that Show Me the Way sounded like an up-tempo single, So, and everybody at A&M did. We all did, and we thought Baby I Love Your Way was a great song too. So we released both of them, Show Me the Way first and Baby I Love Your Way second, and crickets.
I know, it's amazing. I've been contemplating that because it's like that album comes out in 1975. You release Show Me the Way, you release Baby I Love Your Way, they don't get played. A year later, because you're touring that album, you put out this other record called Frampton Comes Alive, and you put out Show Me the Way and Baby I Love Your Way.
Same order.
Boom. I know, the same songs, and they just both explode. Like everyone has to have that record.
I have to give credit to three areas, because in those days, everything was regional. It wasn't from when they started programming all the radio stations the same. I used to be able to say, if you drop me blindfolded in a parachute in Los Angeles, I would know from listening to the radio where I was. And if you drop me into Detroit, same thing, I would know where I was. New York, same thing. But then all of a sudden, everything became homogenized and everybody played the same everything. Then it became more businesslike, because in those days, San Francisco put their arms around me when the Frampton album came out. And so did Detroit, and so did New York. But San Francisco was basically, I owned the airway. KSAN Radio was the new music kind of FM station, and I owned it. It was unbelievable. I mean, my friends from San Francisco, and then I would hear from Detroit. So I think that because of those, and New York, because of those three areas, and as soon as that live album hit the stores, those three places just went like that, and it led the country.
In the recording of the live album, those were cities like San Francisco where you could pack a theater, and obviously they know the songs when you're playing them, and there's a great response. And so there's this electricity in the response. And, you know, you might not have had that response in other cities because of this regional thing, but in those markets, you were huge. And so that's what came across on that record, right?
Exactly. That was the first time we had 93% of the album comes from Winterland in San Francisco. That was the first time we'd headlined in San Francisco because we could. That was the thing. You know, Bill Graham, rest in peace. I like that man. And he raised us from the middle position to way ahead of everywhere. We were in the middle position in America. You know, we were the special guest, not the opener. And in San Francisco, in the middle of the summer, when we're promoting the Frampton record, Bill Graham said, no, he can headline here. People are going crazy for him. So that's why we decided that we would record there.
So you were still a supporting act in a lot of the country, even on the album Frampton and that tour.
Oh, yes. No, there was New York, Detroit, and San Francisco were the three places I could headline. The only three.
No
places.
Chicago. I'm in Chicago. So
no. Or Boston. Too finicky there. No.
Did you feel like when you were touring that album that you were taking all those songs to another level?
Yes. We realized, especially after we finished the show in Winterland, we went into the truck and were blown away. He just played like 3 tracks and we couldn't believe it. How the energy, and you felt it. You know, it was like really strong. And that's when I realized that if I have an audience, they're ready to receive, as it were, and knowing full well what's coming. They've come to see me. My name's on the ticket. This was the first time anyone had, like, I was doing a show where everyone had come to see me, not the opening act, not you know. Whereas all this time, it's like I told the actors on Almost Famous, because I was the authenticity advisor.
Oh, nice. I love that. I love that movie, by the way, and love Cameron Crowe. So
thank you. So they would all come to me and say, what's my motivation? What do I, you know, when I go out on stage? And, it's the motivation line, is it? No. So I said, your motivation is you are supporting Black Sabbath. And what I was told by my manager was, go out and steal as many of their audience as you can, because one day it's going to be you, the last on the bill. If you do that, you've got to go out there and put out and be energetic and make them remember you and take them home, you know, as your fans. So by the time we get to headlining, we're so energetic,
right?
You know, and grabbing everything we can. But we've grabbed. We don't have to grab anymore. They're giving back. So
there it is.
There it is. Yeah.
There's also this great symmetry in that you have Humble Pie, 4 studio albums, and then a live album. And the live album is the one that goes gold. And you'd even sort of expressed afterward, like, oh, maybe my timing wasn't so great because I left before they became big. But then you went and did 4 studio albums and then a live album. And your live album became like the greatest selling album of all time. So vindicating your own choices, I would say. But the parallel is really interesting.
Yes, it is. It is. when we released Rock On, which is my Frampton, that's Frampton for me.
Right. Fourth album.
Right.
Humble Pie.
When you realize that Rock On was the biggest selling album we had up until that point, still wasn't a hit, I wouldn't call it, but we got into the charts and it probably sold a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000. Everyone, I think management and the record company said, look, you've got to give them what they want. Your records, Humble Pie's records, aren't the same as your live performance. Nobody's is, but you're ferocious live. Why don't we do a live album? And bingo, so we got our first gold record because it was what they wanted. So I do my 4 studio records, have my Rock On in Frampton, and it starts, it got into the church, same as, almost exactly the same as Humble Pie. I don't think any of us said anything. We just went, as if the next one's live.
Right.
It was a foregone conclusion. Why mess with a good thing? It works, So that was why we did it.
I was with a friend of mine yesterday who he was like sort of a teenager when Frampton Comes Alive came out. He was talking about how transformative, just seeing the cover as a kid, like he thought it was so exciting that he knew he had to own that album just from looking at it and seeing you with that guitar and the gatefold when you bought it and opened it up. But I hadn't really considered that the cover itself was kind of a landmark in his own way. Did you think of it that way?
Well, the only thing was there was a reason for that, in as much as in those days, end of the summer, after we'd finished touring, and we had
in 75
Alive in the can. We hadn't mixed it yet, but we had it in the can, and I was in LA. And the art department wanted to choose an album cover. And that's when there were 3 shots they lined up for me. And I said, oh, my God. I said, I love the long one, but all the others were this way,
Right.
And
horizontal.
Right. And this was vertical. I said, well, we can't use that one. I know it's gatefold, but how are you going to do that? So I said, so I called Jerry Moss, which you could do with Jerry anytime, day or night. The
M and A&M.
Yeah. Jerry, can you come over and just help me with this album cover? It's the president, just. and so he comes right over, that was the way he was. I mean, he was I love Jerry. We just lost him, obviously. But so he came in and he said, I said, well, look, we've got to use one of these 2 because this one's the wrong shape. And he said, well, why don't you open it up like that? The front cover, just so happens, like that, and then put you down that way, and then it'll fold this way. I said, but then I'll be the wrong shape. He said, doesn't matter. It's still there. And so that's how we changed.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden you're obviously headlining and you're playing bigger places. Did that change the way you played? I mean, obviously there's been so much written about, how your audience changed and you appeal a lot to women and they were up front and the guys were in the back. But like in terms of the, you guys as musicians, did that affect how you were presenting your songs?
No, not really. We were so thrilled. Basically, our stage act became the hit. So we couldn't lose. We just had to play our stage act, play the live record, and it was going to be a great night. That's what they wanted. Normally, you'll have an artist that will come and has a hit single, and the audience will have to wait until the last number for, or for the finale. Here's my hit single, but every song was a hit single.
Because everyone owns that album, so they want to hear all those songs.
Yeah.
Do you write when you're on the road, or do you sort of take a break and then go under a palm tree and do the next record?
I don't multitask very well. When I'm on the road, it's all from the moment I wake up to the moment I come off stage and then I'm off. I've always been that way. The whole day is for one reason and one reason. It's not like I go golfing and like a lot of people, like Alice Cooper, he goes golfing before the show. I can't do that. I'm I'm like this. I have a show to do. I'm going to make sure I eat right. I rest. I do this. I practice. So yeah, that's me.
I was wondering if you've been following all this Jan Wenner stuff the last few days.
Oh, well, I'm waiting to see if it's a reality.
Because he's out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and maybe not the gatekeeper anymore.
Is he, though? I want absolute confirmation that before I say a word, that he has nothing, he's not appealing the decision, to come back, because, I'm not going to say it until I know that, because otherwise I'll never get it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I don't really give a shit, because I know he's in charge of it. And so it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, I know an artist that took him out to dinner and all of a sudden got a nomination. So, it's not, I wouldn't want to go to dinner with him.
All right. Well, we'll keep tabs on it, but I think and hope he's out. And I hope, on one hand, I feel like the rock and roll, like I don't need confirmation, any official confirmation of the music that I love. So I think the whole thing is
no, exactly.
And then on the other hand, I realize you're not in it, and I'm like, what? Come on. So there you go.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is it will be nice if I were to be inducted, and it would be nice if I were to be inducted while I could still play.
Sure.
Because these hands, these fingers are starting to slow down because of age, but also my IBM, and I don't know how long I've got, basically, to actually play. It's getting more difficult.
Well, I hope it happens that you do get in and are able to play. And I hope you bring your tour to Chicago, because I saw that you're playing some places in November, but it's not here. Right. So that's because it's to punish us, because we didn't, Chicago didn't embrace you before Frampton Comes Alive came out. So
that's right. That's the only reason.
It's Chicago's fault. Thank you so much. This has been just a total pleasure.
All right. Bye for now.
That's it for episode 103 of Caropop. Thanks so much to Peter Frampton for being so gracious, insightful, and good-humored as he took us on the thrill ride of his early career. Frampton at 50, Intervention Records LP box set featuring Wind of Change, Frampton's Camel, and Frampton can be ordered at interventionrecords.com. This is a limited edition of 2,500 numbered units, and reviews among the audio nerds have been outstanding, so don't sleep on this one. The individual albums are also available on CD, SACD. And be sure to read Frampton's 2020 memoir, Do You Feel Like I Do?, written with Alan Light. Frampton was diagnosed several years ago with an inflammatory muscle disease known as IBM, so he takes nothing for granted and tours are a big deal. He has one scheduled in November in the southern U.S., with the first date in Louisville on November 9th and the last one at Nashville's Ryman Auditorium on November 22nd. Fingers crossed more dates will follow. Go to Frampton.com for more information and follow him on Instagram at Mr. Peter Frampton and on Twitter at Peter Frampton. Caropop is produced by Chris Waite. Hey, Chris.
I want to thank you.
I'm Mark Caro. Please follow Caropop on Twitter and Instagram at CaroPopcast. And you can follow me as well at Mark Caro at MarkCaro. Also, visit caropop.com where you can find this podcast and enter your email address so you'll hear about upcoming events and episodes. Please share this episode, subscribe, tell your friends, and tune in again next week for another Caropop conversation. Thanks.